It's round 2 of Players' Cup. This time we're up against Mill. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sable Eyes. I'm Mitch, and today we are going to be showing off my second round game in the Players' Cup Oceania. We are playing against Mill, which is a very bad matchup for Dragapult. We'll see whether or not we can get across the line. Unfortunately, I forgot to start recording at the beginning of Game 1. That's more of a blessing than a curse, because we don't need to watch an extra 15 minutes of stall gameplay, but we'll join the action with Jordan Palmer in commentary about halfway through Game 1. Alright, so we obviously have jumped in halfway through here. I forgot to start the recording, but we're playing against Stall, which for Dragapult is usually a pretty average matchup. I've managed to drag along Jordan to watch this one with me because I'm not sure I could relive this one just by myself. How are we doing, Jordan?
Not too bad, and yeah, it's a bit of a rough game. We're almost doing you a favour by jumping in halfway through and allowing you guys to skip the first section of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see the situation that we're in here. We are 4 prizes up against Stall, and at this point, you'd think that you'd be feeling pretty good, but obviously Articuno is a card that Stall plays. So we're going to see a Cold Crush here, and that's going to remove both of the energy from my Dragapult VMAX, and at this stage of the game when there's not a lot going on for me, I'm probably in a bit of a rough spot. It's not the end of the world, but it's definitely not a good position to be in.
Yeah, I mean, you at least got quite a bit of a lead in the game so far. Obviously, you're down to 2 prize cards. Dragapult can very quickly take those prize cards, but there isn't really an easy route to taking them right now. That skinny could potentially become an easy route to taking it if it doesn't evolve in the near future, but that seems unlikely, obviously. Otherwise, there could just be the knockout Articuno for 2 prizes strategy, which does seem quite realistic, because if you find an energy to even just shred this turn for 60 damage, that means it would just be an energy and a boss from being knocked out next turn if you were able to keep that energy in play. But it's a bit hard to predict what's going to happen against Stall, because you never know just how good their hand is, and when they've got a couple Chinchino in play, it's usually going to be pretty good. That Shrine could also make quite a difference here, actually.
It could. So I've managed to put myself in a spot where I am at least going to be able to do something. The unfortunate part is I am going to need to draw with research to try and find energy here. I find one which is pretty good, and the Shrine will then tick across so that this Articuno is on 70 damage, but one of the things with these Stall decks is that all that needs to happen is this Articuno needs to get out of the active, and then it can just be Bellelba and Bryson manned away. So even though it might be an out for us now, it's not necessarily going to be a guaranteed way to win the game. They could just switch and get rid of it. So we'll see. We will see. But at least we managed to find an energy that turn. If we do find another energy next turn without this one being removed, then we could potentially sneak a victory, but the Cold Crush GX is very, very frustrating.
Yeah, you're still at 19 cards in deck. Obviously, your opponent has just used their Articuno GX attack, and you know their deck list, so you are very well aware that you're not going to be having to deal with a Mewtwo randomly using Macargo's GX attack to mill cards, so you've got quite a few turns left in you. The bigger question is how many energy you've got left in you. And obviously, we both know the opponent's list because you've shown it to me. He is playing 4 copies of Team Yell Grunts, which is definitely quite annoying. But if the energy comes to hand instead of the discard pile, it's not actually that bad, because I feel like you're in a position where you can maybe try and squeeze a win just by using a couple shreds at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. So there's at least that out to it here. We see that Delcatty coming down, so grabbing Surge and Bellelba and Bryson Man out of the discard pile. Going to be trying to get this Articuno onto the bench. There's Tate and Liza to do that, and now Bellelba and Bryson Man, you would think, would get rid of that Articuno as well as even that Delcatty as well. So this is a pretty good spot for our opponent to be in now, as long as they have their Recycle Energy, which they've just attached. They can start setting up their late game, and that's what Stall really likes to do, is they like to get down to 2 or 3 cards in deck. At the moment, our opponent has 4, and then start trying to loop around those really annoying cards, things like Crushing Hammer and all of that frustrating stuff, until they can lock you out of winning the game, and then they just accelerate your milling by playing Bellelba and Bryson Man. So at the moment, our opponent in a pretty solid position, but like you said, Jordan, as long as we can keep shredding, we should be okay. Pretty rough, though, losing that Horror Psychic. We've now got 5 energy in the discard pile, and the deck only plays 9. So there's only 3 more left, wherever they are.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because you actually got to keep your energy there, which is really surprising. I was not expecting that at all. I was thinking at the very least it was probably going to be coming back to hand. We've still got a relatively healthy deck size at 6, keeping in mind that the maximum they can ever mill in one turn is 6. Yeah, they can only ever mill 6. So with 16 cards in deck, you've got quite a few turns left in you, especially since they're probably not going to be using Belobba, like 2 Belobbas every single turn. They're probably going to need to be prioritizing other cards. Like Giratina in the hand is so juicy. It's like almost taunting you how good it could be. Except I'm pretty sure recycled energy does not work that way. And we see the opponent getting double crushing hammer there. It's definitely scary. Marnie, it's kind of funny here because it doesn't really do anything to the opponent. All it does is just give them access to those cards without having to trade for them. However, what is good is that it means that we can potentially revitalize the deck size by shuffling those 5 cards in, drawing a fresh 5 without actually milling anything, and that would give us the opportunity potentially to find energy cards.
Yeah. Well, this is where
it means that you've got higher chance of finding that energy, which could be pretty good. But obviously, the more cards you discard, the quicker you are to potentially losing the game.
Yeah, so exactly. So this is where I make my big mistake. I think if I had have just kept shredding here, I probably would have been fine. But I kind of thin out a lot of stuff here when I don't have to, and then Marnie down to.
Other energy in the deck still actually didn't see what the energy.
There's some energy, but not that many, and. Yeah, not ideal at all. Probably didn't have to do that because now I am down to 6 cards left in deck. So Belobba and Bryson Man is the out for our opponent now. We do get the Max Phantom off, which is good, but we've just left ourselves 1 card too short. I think my game plan here was, okay, if I can knock out an Oranguru and make sure that I still have energy, as long as that Oranguru is on 60 HP, if they want to maintain their game state, then they need to bring it forward. I should be able to shred it, but I just thinned 1 card too many, Jordan, and now I potentially lose to that double Belobba. So hopefully he doesn't have it.
Even if they didn't bring the Oranguru active and left on the bench, unless they got rid of both energy, you could just attach for turn and then snipe it on the bench with a Zigzagoon Scoop Up Net. So you're very much just you're almost as close as it gets to being guaranteed to win the game next turn if you get it next turn. But yeah, that's definitely a very scary spot going down to exactly 6 cards in the deck. You very quickly went from 16 down to 6. It does not take long to.
It doesn't. Especially when you're actively doing it, which is the big mistake that I made. Like 1 Acro Bike that I didn't play, or one Quick Ball that I didn't play, and I think I actually would go on to win this one, but. We'll see whether or not it happens here. All that matters is, well, they've obviously got their 2 Belobba, they've got Surge and Belobba back with that Power Pad. As long as they have 1 Belobba in the prizes, I could potentially win, because there are 2 Belobbas in the discard pile for our opponent at the moment. So if we do get lucky and those prizes are at least 1 Belobba and Bryson Man, then again, we could go on to win, but we just have to wait and see here. Another good thing for us is our opponent has gone down to 5 cards in hand and 2 in deck, so if they don't win that way and do get rid of all of our energy, then we could potentially find Reset Stamp to win if they do play another card. So we'll wait and see what the opponent gets here, but it's a pretty precarious spot. The game is over this turn or next.
Yeah, obviously, if they do attach energy, then they won't lose to the Reset Stamp because they would have access to being able to put cards back in their deck, but they've just used the last, so if they had a Belobba in deck, they are definitely holding it now. There's the Surge, there's the first Belobba. So it's looking a bit scary here.
Looking dicey, there it is. Yep, no, didn't get there.
If they don't have Belobba, you would actually win the game there, because even if they attached to an Oranguru, you'd still be able to potentially find a Reset Stamp, or just, knock him out, because you were down to 1 prize. There were multiple ways to win the game there.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we'll stop there and we'll go on to game 2. So on to game 2 now. I did lose the first one, so I think I'm going to be choosing to go first. And this is the interesting part of the game for Dragapult. If you go first against stall, then you do have a chance to set yourself up if you have a good hand. Probably not an amazing start for me here, having a Mr. Mime on the as the only basic. and no energy in hand, but our opponent is going to give us some cards off of a mulligan, Jordan.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to see the beginning of a game this time. We didn't get to see how the last one started. Do you remember actually if you went first in the last game?
I don't think so. I can't remember. I mean, we'll find out very, very shortly. No, we won't. How will we find out? I don't know. Let's grab a Dedenne, Jordan. We're going to grab a Dedenne here to try and find an energy. We'll grab the Zigzagoon as well. Yeah, I can't remember. I think I did, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, either way, we're looking at this game now. So if you do manage to find an energy, it's a bit awkward for still going first when Dragapult goes first, as you said, because they either need to like waste their supporter to get rid of the attachment, and then you can just attach and play it again, or they might have to like play a card to set themselves up and hope that they both not only draw Crushing Hammer turn 1, but also hit heads on it. So it can be a bit dicey for Stool to prevent Dragapult from setting up at the beginning of the game. And you got to think that once the Dragapult is set up, it's in a pretty decent position, because then your opponent's going to have to waste something like that Articuno GX attack resource, or they might have to just try and get lucky with Crushing Hammerheads. Obviously, the Articuno is definitely a big worry in this matchup, but they can only do that once. So get that out of the way early. You don't have to worry about it in the late game when you eventually manage to power up another Dragapult. So definitely a big advantage keeping this energy on the first turn. We'll see if you're fortunate enough to avoid any Crushing Hammers this turn.
Yeah, exactly. And we're in a decent spot here. We've got Horror Energy in hand. I attached the basic Psychic there so that something like Faber doesn't come down and just end our day. The only way that they can guaranteed get rid of this energy is by using Team Yell Grunt, which obviously means it goes back to hand. So that's fine. Our opponent taking a little bit of time to search there through their deck, grabbing Minccino. They didn't find the Zacian there, so that implies that they either, they have another Quick Ball, either that or they had it in their hand the whole time. And we are actually going to be able to Marnie next turn. We do need to find that VMAX though. Every turn that we're Crushing Hammer, Tails, sick. Alright, no worries. Ooh. We got out of there. There's the Yell Grunt, there we go. They've got rid of the energy in the end. And they'll Intrepid Sword to 4, but that's a very low hand size for Stall.
And at least they had to waste their supporter resource on that Yell Grunt, so it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
The bite for 30 here isn't great, because obviously if you get the shred, you get the knockout, but it doesn't look like that's likely. You could go for it with the Jirachi, since you've got the Scoop Up Net in hand, so it seems like that's going to be what you go for. And you find the treasure, which is pretty good, so you can probably, I guess, guard just the Energy Spinner here. Seems fine. And you'll get a knockout. Your hand is looking a bit on the weak side, but you have 2 energy in your hand, and that's probably like the only card that you actually care about, so it's actually not that bad when you think about it.
Yeah, at this stage of the game, the only cards that you really care about are energy. You just need to make sure that you've got them, so seems good. Take a prize. Yeah, and we get rid of one of their Cinchinos as well. So now if this Zacian does stay in the active, which it looks like it might, Crushing Hammer again, Tails. There you go. That's why you should never play Crushing Hammer, children, because that happens. That happens to you. You end up missing those heads, which are very, very important. There's only one Cinchino here, so the amount of cards that are in our opponent's hand is pretty small, and this is a bad spot for Stall to be in. They usually want to have a much quicker start than this. They want to be drawing through their deck very, very quickly. Just an Intrepid Sword here, that's not a very good setup for our opponent at all.
Yeah, since our opponent was forced to kind of use that Yell Grunt last turn rather than a different supporter to set up. To be fair, they probably didn't have a different supporter, but that's really slowed them down. Especially if you were able to just have a boss in hand, then taking out that Cinchino in this would be so strong. Although you do have the Mr. Mime on the bench, so the Cinchino is a free prize for future attacks, so the hitting into the Zacian is actually pretty good here as well. And obviously you don't really want to dig for cards unless you desperately have to, so now that you've got 2 energy on the Dragapult VMAX, now's when your opponent's probably going to be looking at trying to use that Articuno sooner rather than later, especially with 2 Crushing Hammer in the discard pile, because he's in this position now where discarding 1 energy a turn is not going to be good enough. He needs a turn where he discards both of your energy to get back into the game, and it probably needs to be either this turn or next turn. So it's either Articuno or it's get lucky with Crushing Hammers.
Yeah, exactly. We're at a point now where it is a pretty rough spot for our opponent. There is the Water Energy, so they've obviously got access to something. They're putting down Chaotic Swell, and I think we're going to see a research here. No, a Marnie. So they're going for 5 cards to find that Articuno. We'll see whether they get it. We actually get ourselves into double Scoop Up, Shrine, and Energy. Here's a Crushing Hammer. Another Tails, Jordan. We live to see another day and an Intrepid Sword. So this is fantastic for us because now not only are they not going to get rid of this energy this turn, but we're going to take 4 prizes here. We could actually boss up something as well if we want to, although I think the best thing to do here is probably just to knock out the Cinccino. I do like the idea of knocking out the Skitty though, because that means that we don't have the risk of our opponent evolving and grabbing those supporters out of the discard pile. So it's a bit of a toss-up. Do you go for the Cinccino, which is guaranteed draw, or do you go for the Skitty, which could potentially be a Surge and some annoying supporters?
Yeah, for me, I would probably prioritize the Cinccino here, just because you're not only getting rid of the Zacian, but you're also getting rid of the Cinccino, so you're removing both of their draw options. But I don't hate going for the Skitty either. I guess the other question is, do you attach this Horror Energy to the active to try and mitigate any Crushing Hammers? I would think not, because they've used so many Crushing Hammers now. The bigger worry is the Articuno instead, so I would be more scared of the Articuno than the Crushing. So I like that you're holding on to the boss. I like that you're holding on to the energy. I like that you're going after the Cinccino. So you're having a pretty good turn here, in my opinion.
Well, here's the thing. That last 10 damage counters was a bit of an error there. Really should have put that on the Oranguru, because if I had put that there, then I would have completely locked up my opponent's maneuverability in this turn. Obviously, now that there's no damage on that Oranguru, they can scoop it up. The 20 on the Skitty is there so that next turn I could potentially take a knockout on a Delcatty with the Scoop Up Net and the Zigzagoon, but if they're able to move their Oranguru around, I might not be able to just win the game next turn. Although I do have Boss, so any basic Pokemon that get put down, at the moment I'm looking pretty solid.
Yeah, I don't think the Scoop Up Net on the Oranguru is that big a deal, because, like, what Pokemon do they actually have that would even be able to take a hit from this Dragapult? Literally, the only one I can think of is Articuno, and that brings itself into the active automatically. So I don't really think. I do think that the damage on the Skitty there is fine, unless they're playing cards that I'm not familiar with. I don't remember the exact 60 that they're playing. But the Reset Stamp there is definitely one of the scariest cards that we can see from the opponent. They are playing the Scoop Up Net actually, so they're just gonna try and just soak a hit with that Oranguru. So you are correct that 10 damage on the Oranguru could have actually been a bit useful there, but oh well.
It doesn't matter. We've actually drawn ourselves into Scoop Up Net here and Horror Psychic, so if we had managed to hold on, then we might have been able to steal a win, but I don't think it's going to matter too much. We're in a really dominant spot here. We're going to be able to take a knockout on Skitty and put some damage counters onto that Cinccino on the bench. Our opponent is just drawing lots of their cards here, getting rid of the Yell Grunts and things like that. I think we're going to see another Zacian come out here, because the deck does play 2, and it's going to give access to some more draw cards. So that's probably not a bad spot for them to be in, but they really need to start doing something. This is one of the problems that Mill has, is that sometimes they just don't do anything for a long period of time, and Dragapult can sometimes create victory situations out of that. So we are in a pretty good spot here. If we top deck any decent card, we probably play it. But for the moment, I think the next thing we do is just Max Phantom, take a knockout, put some damage onto the Cinccino, and see how we go from there.
I mean, with a lucky top deck, you could even just knock out the Cinccino right now and win the game. I'm not actually sure what that Skitty's attack does. Are they looking at attacking us with a Skitty here?
So Skitty does 10 damage, and on a coin flip paralyzes you. So normally a very frightening thing to happen, but we've got the Escape Board on the active Dragapult and the Scoop Up Net in hand. So even if they do flip heads, which they do, we can just retreat into the Zigzagoon and take the knockout because we'll scoop it up. So it's not the end of the world here. We actually managed to get ourselves out of that really awkward spot, and we'll be able to Max Phantom here. Pretty sad for our opponent.
So yep, I like that you're putting the Zigzagoon down, because it's safe to assume your opponent is probably going to be attempting a Reset Stamp on this next turn, and putting damage on that Cinccino is going to guarantee that if this Dragapult VMAX ever attacks again, it will end the game straight away, due to the fact that there's a Cinccino on the board that I guess he could maybe fill the bench and like below but down to try and remove that, but it's really awkward. Like you're basically one attack away from winning the game no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. And no matter where we go from here, I think we win this game because our opponent just doesn't have enough cards. There's the concession. So game 2, a victory. It's now 1-1. We'll go into game 3 and see if I can't win it from there. Alright, on to game 3, and this is starting to get pretty stressful because I've managed to win one game against Stall, but now I need to win a second, and like we said at the beginning, Dragapult is not a particularly strong deck against Stall, so we will see how we go. We've got a decent start. We're going second here, so we will be able to attach and bite, I suppose, but the rest of our hand isn't particularly strong. We'll have to see how it goes. Going second is always awkward with Dragapult because you never quite get to do anything, really. So at least here, what we can do is we can attach. We'll probably play the Acro Bike, try and, ooh, 2 bosses off the top. There you go, we'll just grab one of those, I guess. That sucks. And I think we might just need to bite. I think there's nothing much else that we could really do.
Yeah, it's not amazing. Wait, did our opponent actually have a turn?
Yeah, they put down an Oranguru and then passed.
That's a pretty bad turn, honestly.
Yeah, it is. I think actually what I'm thinking about here, I think I'm going for the Dedenne, which is a risky play, but I like the idea of hitting into this Minccino for a bit. Could have gone for the Zigzagoon there and done 3 sets of damage to it, but yeah, this is a big risk that I'm going for here to try and get something. I don't know really what I'm doing at this point. I'm just playing cards because I'm playing cards here. This feels like a really awkward thing to be doing.
I mean, you definitely were going to need to use the Dedenne next turn, even if you didn't use it just then. I definitely don't like the Marnie there, just because of how bad the opponent's turn 1 was looking to be. Obviously, it's possible they were just holding on to everything. They were just waiting for you to attach an energy, just waiting to evolve their Minccino. That's very likely they had some of those cards in their hand, so it's not too bad taking them back to 4 cards, especially since they don't really have many Mincinos down, so like they can get that lucky. But the main thing is that they did miss the Zacian last turn, so we have that information that they definitely weren't holding Quick Ball or any cards like that.
Yeah, exactly. You can see my flustered nature getting in my way there, almost playing that Mysterious Treasure when I did not need to. We've got it in hand now for next turn. We've also got an Escape Board on a Jirachi. Here comes another Crushing Hammer. We'll see whether they can get heads on this one. No, tails as well. Another Crushing Hammer.
They got 2 Crushing Hammer off of a Marnie. That's actually insane.
And they finally got a heads. That's their first heads on Crushing Hammer here. Now they're going for Quick Ball. You would think that this would be for Zacian here, depending, of course, on what their last card in hand is. But now our hand is horrifically bad. We might need to just retreat into Jirachi and hope for the best here.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the Marnie benefited the opponent a lot more than it benefited you here. So that was a bit unfortunate, but most important thing, I guess, is that you just find an energy attachment. I don't think it's... I mean, if you could get the knockout on the Minccino, that would be pretty good, but I don't think it's essential. I just really want to try and get access to that Dragapult VMAX attack for the next turn, so retreating to Jirachi is the only option here. I guess finding something like another Marnie or a Research is the best case scenario. But you have to discard another boss. Is that the last boss?
I think this is the last one, yeah. So I think we have to get rid of that here, which is going to be real awkward. I also attached the Escape Board to the Dedenne on the bench there, being like, okay, well, I'll just go for a Scoop Up Net or something like that. Shouldn't have done that either. This is just riddled with some bad plays here that I just didn't need to do. But I do grab the Mr. Mime here, which I do like. This Minccino now could potentially be locked into the active because I know that my opponent only plays 2 ways to switch without scooping up. And that's manually retreating or using a Tate and Liza. So hopefully this Chinchino can stay in the active for a little bit. I might be able to just get myself a knockout next turn.
Yeah, there's definitely potential. You've got a pretty solid hand now for next turn. You could very easily take even, depending on what they do, you could even take 2 knockouts pretty easily. I'm a little worried just with how much you've had to go ham this game for your deck. You're already down to 23 cards in deck after that research gets played. If you decide to dig a little further, you're already going to be at the deck size of... the end game during the first game of this set where you had 16 cards. You're going to be down to 16 cards almost instantly. And here is another Crushing Hammer and another head. So they're getting a bit redeemed with the Crushing Hammer luck, getting 2 out of 3 this game, which is definitely not a good spot to be in. Saving their Yell Grunts. If they just have a Yell Grunt for next turn, I've got to say this is a really bad spot for you.
Yeah, exactly. It is pretty awkward. Now I can either go ham here or just sit back and hope for the best. I find Marnie and there's an Escape Board there as well. So now I don't need to play the Research to get this Jirachi out of the active. If I want, I can just go and take the knockout. Now, this is a bit of a risk here because if I do choose to take this knockout, then I will be in range of those Lieutenant Surges. So I'd really prefer to not have to take this prize here, but I think I will. I think I'll just go for it because what's the worst that can happen? I mean, we're playing against Mill, and I've kind of given up on this game anyway, haven't I?
I mean, getting Chinchino off the board is a pretty big deal, so it's definitely not a bad thing. You need to take prizes sooner rather than later, that's for sure, because the game is going to be ending at a pretty fast pace if the opponent goes into aggro mill. And of course, the more important thing is you just need to try and take prizes before you run out of energy. And the opponent's now in a position where they can probably safely afford to just try and play a Team Yulgrunt every turn for the rest of the game. It shouldn't be too hard for them to do that, theoretically. Luckily, they've got no Chinchinos on the board, though, so if you can force them to use Research to draw cards instead of Yulgrunt, you might be forcing them to resort on more Crushing Hammerheads.
Yeah, exactly, and they've already played 3 Crushing Hammers in the game so far, so they will need to put them back with resource management if they want to use them. So not likely to see them go off here. Here comes the Lieutenant Surge now, which is what I was worried about, and the Team Yulgrunt, so that gets that energy back to hand. And then just a Bellower Bryson, man. It actually discards 2 energy from our deck there. We already have 4 in the discard pile. So this is looking like a pretty rough spot to be in, Jordan. I'm not liking my odds here.
Yeah, the fact that they were able to play the Yulgrunt there, and they were also able to take advantage of another supporter is really scary. Obviously, that was the risk of the Surge, but I don't think... I mean, obviously, the Bellower there was really bad for us, but even if they just played the Yulgrunt, it still wasn't a good position. But man, losing 3 energy in 1 turn is so crazy. Our opponent's board state is getting better. It's still not great because they've got a pretty low hand size, and they haven't got access to any of their Chinchinos yet, but they are just like 1 evolution away from just putting themselves in a really good spot. Maybe for the Tina there to get rid of the recycle engine.
Well, the reason I did that, Jordan, is because I wanted to force them to play that recycle energy back down, right? Because I don't want this energy to be easily discarded by like a rogue Articuno or something that comes through. I kind of want to keep this, preferably. Because if I keep the energy on the Dragapult, then I can potentially get on and try and take some more prizes. But yeah, would prefer not to have to deal with Articunos in this game. Forcing our opponent to attach to a Rangaroo means that we won't need to worry about it. So that was the logic behind that. Whether it's a good play or not is another question, but we'll see.
Obviously, the opponent is discarding a Father there with the Chinchino, so very fortunate that we have the basic energy to deal with here on this turn instead of the Horror Psychic, but they've got Chinchino in play now, so their hand size is slowly creeping back up, and I feel like if they have cards to work with, we're going to be in trouble. The only way we win this game is if they've kind of got a slow hand and they're not really able to do what they want to do, but that does not seem to be the case. They're able to get a Delcatty, they can guarantee themselves the Team Yulgrunt, that energy back into hand. And I do think that if we're just forced to shred every turn for the rest of the game, if they just play 1 Yulgrunt every turn, I don't think we're going to be able to take our prize cards quick enough, which is really unfortunate. We do still have 17 cards left, so once again, that is quite a lot of time, especially if they're not able to play below it every turn. But it's more about the energy attachments, and this time we have a lot more prizes to take than last time. We're down to 2. Now we're still at 5 prize cards, and they're getting Crushing Hammers back, which is probably the worst case scenario.
Yeah, but on the plus side, we managed to keep our energy on the active, so I can use Max Phantom this turn, which is a good thing. I'm going to be able to take 2 prizes, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it does put 2 cards back into the deck at some point, so I'm happy with that. We can take a knockout on the Oranguru and then put 5 damage counters onto the Skitty on the bench that already has 1 tick on it, so that seems reasonable. It's not ideal, obviously, but that's 2 prizes that we didn't have last turn, so it forces our opponent to deal with the energy that's on our active Pokemon now.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid turn. It's pretty much the most we could possibly ask for. Taking 2 prizes is definitely a big deal. And 3 is an amount that I wouldn't be like super worried about getting Reset Stamped yet either, especially since our opponent's probably going to be having to prioritize other cards like the Crushing Hammers, trying to prioritize getting other supporters like the Team Yulgrunt. But there's another Crushing Hammer tail, so they're 2 for 2 this game.
Yep, 50-50, fair enough.
That would have been the actual last crush, because the other ones I think are still on the bottom of the deck, so that would have been the actual 4th Crushing Hammer in their hands there, they must have drawn, because I imagine they would have played it last turn if they had access to it. Unless I'm wrong, they might have shuffled their deck, but I don't think they have.
I don't think so either. They've got rid of a Team Yell Grunt there actually as well, so wonder what they're going for here. I'm not going for that guaranteed energy removal. They could, of course, have another one in hand. That is definitely possible, considering the deck plays 4. We'll see what happens here. Got 5 cards in hand, 20 in deck. I'm in a pretty rough spot now. They've got their Cinccino's set up. They've got Skitty on the bench that if they do remove one of my energy, I'm not going to be able to knock out next turn. So, kind of awkward, but you know, it's not unwinnable from here. I think keeping that energy last turn means that I've given myself a chance. But here comes that Delcatty, so they will be able to grab those supporters back now.
Yeah, if they just grab like the Lobas and the Ogrunts and Surge, I'm guessing those are probably the 3 supporters that they'll prioritize the most. Luckily, getting rid of the Skitty does stop them from like spamming that Delcatty ability, which could be a big deal. Oh, it only gets 2 back, that's right.
Yeah, so it goes for Surge and Bellelba there, so choosing not to get the Yell Grunt back, so they must have another one of those in hand. Play down the Surge here, and we'll see what their plan is from here. I'm going to play a Quick Ball and get rid of a Super Scoop Up. Oh, not a Super Scoop Up, a Scoop Up now.
Well, I was thinking time for Articuno, because once again, the Yell Grunt doesn't really do that much if they've got to look at it, grab those Crushing Hammers. Did they shuffle? I forget. I think they did shuffle.
I think they did shuffle, so they just they got the 1 Crushing Hammer there. Maybe a bit of a mistake from our opponent. Could have gone and drawn into them earlier, but that's okay. We've managed to at least keep 1 on for now. They've got access to 1 more supporter, and they do have Bellelba and Bryson Man in hand, so we could potentially keep that here. Here comes the Bellelba. We lose a few cards. Our opponent's down to 13, and we're on 13 now as well, so we actually have more cards than our opponent, Jordan.
Yeah, that's very often happens with Store. Even though their game plan is to mill the opponent, they often end up milling themselves before that happens. And that's not a bad thing, because the smaller the deck size is for this mill deck, the more they can control exactly what they want to do each turn. And now we're in a really awkward spot. No energy in hand, so we can't even use Max Phantom. We can definitely not afford to play that Research, so it's literally just going to have to be a shred. So our opponent is just pretty much any card away from denying us the Max Phantom.
Exactly.
Game. I think if this energy gets removed right now, I don't see us ever pulling off that attack again realistically.
I don't think so. I think we're kind of done attacking if this energy goes. We might not even have any energy left, to be fair. I'm not entirely sure how many I've got in the discard pile at this point. Hopefully I'll take a look. No, don't decide to do that there. We do have the good thing going for us in that Mr. Mime is on the field, so Cinccino at the moment can't retreat, and they've actually just discarded a water energy there, so opting not to go into the Oranguru there, which is an interesting choice. Maybe they're looking for their Tate and Liza, but we could potentially have Tate and Liza in the discard pile, Jordan, so that would be good for us if that is the case. They've got a pretty big hand and 3 cards in deck, so it's not like we're going to be able to win next turn, but we should be okay, provided we can keep this Cinccino in the active just for a little bit longer.
Well, another thing they could have done, could do here, because I'm pretty sure they still have the Recycle Engine in their hand. They could attach the Recycle to the Cinccino, and they could actually attack with
Energy Assist.
Yep.
Either
way, whatever it's called, it accelerates the energy to the benched Oranguru with the water they just discarded, so they could very easily just not only get themselves an energy to retreat for next turn, but also power up that Oranguru. Could be a very niche spot where that attack is actually useful for our opponent here. It'll definitely make it easy for them to get that Oranguru in the active. There's the Yell Grunt, so no more attacks for us for the rest of the game. I think if they can get that Oranguru attacking into the active, there's like no way to ever win the game, because we wouldn't be able to deck them out. They'd be constantly putting cards back in their deck, and we would not have access to ever taking prize cards, because we don't really have energy left. So yeah, exactly.
It's looking pretty grim. We've been big reset stamp there is gonna get rid of some cards. Although this is an interesting play from our opponent. They've Bellelba'd themselves to 0. They have 5 cards in their hand, Jordan. I don't know if you've noticed what's on the far right of my hand there. I've actually managed to get reset stamp off of the reset stamp. So our opponent power padding 2 supporters in. If they've got something like an ordinary rod, then it's not going to matter. But if they just pass, I play Reset Stamp and I win. Unbelievably, managed to get a game out of stall. And they have. They've just passed.
Oh my...
So, yeah, we'll just win the game, I reckon. What do you think?
That is insane, because they had just locked... That game was locked up. That game was over.
I don't know. We just managed to win. Thanks for coming, Jordan. Appreciate it.
That was pretty insane.
We got it. We did it. So in the end, it evened out a little bit. There was that first game, which I probably should have won if I didn't thin so aggressively, followed up by that last game where our opponent just kind of exploded at the end there and gave us the win with the Reset Stamp. 2-1 win, which puts me into the third round next week, where I'll be playing against Pikarom. Check out the channel on Monday next week where we'll see that game and hopefully more winners bracket gameplay. But worst case scenario, I'll at least show off the games that I play and losers until I'm out of the tournament. That's what it's all about. So we'll see you then. If you want to catch up with all the content that we're putting out in the meantime, we do videos daily. You can check it out by subscribing. There's a button just here to get every single one of our videos coming through on your notification feed. Down this side are some videos YouTube thinks you'll like, as well as a playlist of some more Rebel Clash gameplay. So thank you very much for coming along. We'll see you next time for more from the Sableyes.